Hello, welcome to the Zippy travel bag tutorial video. The supplies we'll be using for the Zippy travel bag are 2 pieces of quilting cotton, about 1/4 meter each, some interfacing, spool of thread, a 12-inch zipper, same thing as 30cm zipper, and a piece of twill tape. Ribbon also works for this. And it looks like I've got a lot of tools out, and you don't absolutely need all of them, but I will be using either glue or sewing tape. And this is double-sided tape that you can sew through and it washes away. The glue also washes away. So those are both really handy to have for this project. I've got a marker that can draw on both light colors and dark colors, and some scissors. Wonder clips are super handy instead of pins. I also have pins, something to measure with, and I'll be cutting with a rotary cutter, but I'm also going to show you how to cut without. We need to cut 2 pieces from the exterior and the lining fabric, and both of them, all of them are 10 inches tall and 14 inches wide. So because they're all the same size, I'm going to stack them up and cut them together. Makes it a little bit faster. I have the fabric folded, 2 selvages together, and it's a fold over here. Now we'll be using up about this much of the fabric, and we'll have a leftover piece here. And because the leftovers are on the fold, you're gonna have a pretty big piece of leftover. So if we cut them over here close to the fold, then you'd end up with 2 small leftovers rather than 1 bigger one. So it's always better to cut closer to the selvage. You can even fold your fabric more like this, so that you have 1 bigger piece left over. I'm gonna do this, and I've got an extra big edge right here with nothing on my print, so I'm gonna start cutting in about here. And you can see that this fabric is definitely not cut straight, and it's not lining up perfectly. None of that matters because we haven't cut anything yet, and our first cut is gonna be our baseline, and from that cut, we're gonna make everything straight and square based off of that first cut. So I'm gonna push the fabric over past my 0 line. So this is my line. Since I'm right-handed, I'm cutting on the right side of the mat for me. If you were left-handed, you'd flip it over and do that side. And I'm gonna put the ruler right on the 0 line. And I've cut that off. So now I'm doing the width. So I've got 1 straight line here. I'm gonna leave this right here and move over 14 inches because I wanna be 14 inches wide. I'm not at all concerned with how these edges line up. They're really crooked right now. That doesn't matter. So I'm gonna cut at the 14. And here's my leftover. I'll put those aside. Now I can just come and go on to the other side of the mat and then cut these edges, or I can turn the fabric. So I'm gonna turn the fabric. Now these 2 straight lines, they're parallel to each other and they're great. I now have to line those up with my horizontal 0 line so that I know that my next cuts are gonna be square with that. So I've lined those up and I've pushed it over just enough so that I can cut something off. And so I'll be squaring this edge up. I'm cutting on the 0 line. Okay, and my next cut is 10 inches. So if I put my ruler on the 10, because I'm right-handed, I have to put my ruler down on the left side, and this is not holding very much fabric. So what I'm gonna do is spin the fabric, place my cut line on 10, and then I'm gonna cut again on the 0. And this is a project that it's really easy to change up those numbers if you wanna change the size of your bag. If you want it shorter, you could cut it at 9. These are all done. I've got 4 pieces, 10 inches tall, 14 inches wide. And now I have to cut the interfacing the same size. This is decor bond. So when you open up your interfacing, you should be able to fold it in such a way so that you can get 2 pieces that are 10 inches by 14 inches. If your interfacing is wrinkly, make sure you don't go and try to iron it because it will activate the glue. So we just gotta leave it like that, and you can kind of pull those out. We can straighten out those wrinkles later when you first iron it down onto the fabric. So one way you could do this is throw your fabric down on top of that and cut around it, or you can use your mat to cut. But I'm gonna show you how to do it if you're using a pencil and scissors. And we're gonna measure up 10 inches. and move over and measure another 10 inches. The fold, I'm just gonna slice up the center of that. And now we just need to measure the width and make sure that they're square, that they're right angles to the straight lines we cut. So I have a ruler that's got the horizontal lines here, so I'm gonna put that here, straighten it out with that. So I'm giving myself a straight edge to measure from, right along there. And we'll measure 14 inches over. When I'm cutting interfacing, I always like to cut it just a little bit smaller than the measurements suggest, because when I go to iron this onto my fabric, I won't have any interfacing sticking out of the edge. It just makes that step a little bit easier. You don't have to worry about the glue getting onto your iron or onto your ironing board. So we're gonna take our exterior fabrics and iron them. I'm just kind of heating up the fabric and getting it ready to fuse the interfacing on. I'm gonna flip it onto the wrong side up. So we'll take one piece of the interfacing and check it to see which side is the glue. Double check this because you don't want to put the glue against your iron. So you can see that is the shiny side, that's the glue. Sometimes interfacing feels rougher, the glue feels more like little bumps. This one's shiny. So I'm gonna put that shiny side down against the fabric, and once that's set up, I'm gonna flip it over because I want to iron on the fabric. I just like the way that feels better. I find that it works better. Now, check your interfacing. You can see it is a bit bigger than my fabric. I'm gonna trim that down just so that I don't glue that onto my iron. Okay, so we have the glue against the wrong side of the exterior. So I've got steam on my iron too, which is helpful, and I'm going to walk the iron around the fabric. Just set it for a few seconds and then move on to another spot. If you slide the iron, you're likely to fold the fabric and then you create a lump that just stays like that. When you think it's good, you can check it to see if it's fused. You want to see it that it's stuck together like that. And if it's still coming apart, just go over it again. Once it's fused, you can slide the iron. And now we'll do the next side. This one's pretty wrinkly. I'm gonna iron my fabric first again. Shiny side against the wrong side of the fabric. I'm gonna flip it back over and check on those wrinkles. Now that I've heated it up enough to pull those wrinkles out, but it hasn't fused yet. So I'm gonna make sure those wrinkles go flat, and now I'll finish it off. You can see how once it cools down, it has completely changed how this fabric feels. It stands straight up all by itself. We're going to prepare the zipper by folding the ends of the zipper over to the wrong side. So I'm going to take this off, and just past the little metal stop, we're going to fold the zipper over like that, and you can either glue that down or you can pin it. We're going to do the same thing on this end. So this is the wrong side of the zipper. You can tell by looking at the pull how it's on the back of it. So now we're going to be making a zipper sandwich. These are our sandwich ingredients. We've got the one piece of lining for the bottom, one piece of your exterior with the fusible interfacing, and I want you to check out your exterior fabric, actually both, and see if either of them are directional. So on mine, because I have some words in it, this is my top edge, and that's where the zipper is going to go. So this is the edge I want to be sewing it onto. So we're going to start by taking a piece of lining, this is my bottom, this is my top edge, and we're gonna put the zipper on the top edge of the lining, centered from side to side. So you can see I've got a little bit of fabric on each end, maybe about an inch, half an inch. I'm gonna close this up for now. To hold that in place, I'm gonna use Wonder Tape just to show you how that works. So it's double-sided tape. It's got a backing on it. When I take it off, I'll be able to stick the zipper to it. If you don't have either of these, you can use pins. It's water soluble and it doesn't gum up your needle. It's made for sewing. So I'm going to place the zipper right side up and make sure it's centered. Now that I have that positioned, I'm going to just take this pin out and maybe put it back in here. Now we'll put another piece of tape on top of this. And the next thing is the exterior fabric, right side down, lining up the top edges. Sticking to it. So we're going to be sewing along the top edge of our zipper sandwich. We have the exterior, then the zipper, and then the lining. The two fabrics are facing each other, right sides together. And we need to use a zipper foot for this, which will allow us to get close to the zipper because a zipper's lumpy. So I'm going to put the zipper foot on. I'm putting it on the left side because I want to be sewing on the right side of the zipper, like that. Now, I want you to check and see where your zipper pull is. Mine's way at this end, so I won't have to deal with it until I'm almost there. I'm almost done. When you're using a zipper foot, you can tuck your threads kind of around the side and off to the other direction just to keep them tidy. And I'm doing a 1/4 inch seam. I'm starting to sew not right at the edge of the fabric, just because often with a zipper foot I find that it tends to get a little bit stuck at the very beginning. So I'm starting in a little bit. I'm going to back stitch up to the edge. And then I'm going to use my beginning threads to help me pull through so it doesn't get stuck. And you can see how the little lip in the zipper is just running along the top edge of the zipper. So the lip in the zipper foot is running along the top edge of the zipper. And now I'm getting close to the lump of the zipper pull. If I try to sew past this, if I just try to keep sewing, because of the lump of the zipper pull, I'm going to be pushed off the edge and I won't have a straight seam. So I'm going to get the zipper pull out of the way. I'll turn the wheel so that my needle moves down into the fabric. I can lift the presser foot, reach between the layers, grab my zipper pull, and I'm opening the zipper so it's out of the way. Sometimes this is a bit tricky, but you can, because my needle is holding my spot, I can really play around with it and pull it out of the way. The zipper, remember that your presser foot can go up higher than just, so it can be down, it can be up, and it can be even more up. So that's helpful for getting your zipper pull out of the way. Now I'm ready to sew again. So I'm going to put that back down. So this is the seam we just completed. Exterior, lining. We're now going to fold those two fabrics so that they are now the wrong sides touching. You can line up those edges. And you can see how the zipper is sticking out the top. We're going to make another zipper sandwich with this end of the zipper. Close that up first. So we start with the lining right side up on the bottom, and I'm gonna do this without glue or tape. I'm gonna just do it with pins so we can see how that works. Make sure that your edges match up. So if you're using pins, keep in mind that you're gonna have to be able to move your zipper pull in a minute. And then we're gonna take the right side of the other exterior piece and fold that down. And I'm gonna take each one of those pins and put it onto the top layer. You can also pin this way if that's easier for you. We will be able to move the zipper pull easier with the pins like this, but you have to keep in mind what direction you're sewing, because if you put them in this direction, as you sew, it'll be very awkward to try to pull your pin out because the sewing machine's gonna be in front of it. So you wanna have them pointing at the sewing machine. Okay, so now I'm going to get that zipper pull open because it's in the way from the beginning this time. So I have to pull it out of the way to start, and we'll get it back. We'll close it after we get up to this point when we're sewing. I'm coming close to the zipper pull, so I'm going to put my needle down, lift the presser foot, and pull the zipper closed. Make sure your presser foot's back down when you start sewing again. Peek and see the zipper. So now I want you to pull your lining and exterior together on each side and pull them away from the zipper. You can close the zipper, and you want your raw edges here. So I want my bottom edges of each one to line up, and then we're going to iron this seam right here and top stitch beside the zipper. Make sure you're really pulling them apart. We'll flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Now we're going to be top stitching on the fabric just beside the zipper. We don't want to start the top stitch up at the edge of the fabric, just where the zipper is, because I want to leave this part open. So I'm going to go back to my regular presser foot, and I'm going to lengthen my stitch to 3. And again, I'm going to get the zipper foot out of the way, the zipper pull out of the way. I'm going to line up the edge of the foot with the edge of the zipper like this. So it's just going to be sitting in like that. And now I'll pull this out of the way. We're just going to spin around and do the same thing on the other side. I always want to check and make sure that my lining fabric is pulled out as well, because it would be pretty easy for it to just slip underneath and get stitched in. I've seen that happen many times. So we're just going up to where the zipper ends, and that's it. Now we're going to open the zipper around halfway, and we're going to bring the 2 exterior fabrics right sides together and the 2 lining fabrics right sides together. So the zipper is going to be in the middle, between them. And the first thing we'll do is set up those center seams, the zipper seam. So to make this nice and neat, I'm going to open those seams flat Now, because we top stitch a little ways away from there, it's gonna be a little bit, you'll only be able to open it a little bit, but that's enough for our seam. So the same thing here, I'm gonna open that up, and that just helps it lie nice and flat. It makes your stitching a little bit easier to do. And I'm gonna match those seams up together like that. And I'm gonna clip them. And I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. And from here, we're gonna match up the rest of the seams. You can use clips or pins or a little of both. I like to use pins in the lighter weight fabric. Now we're going to take your piece of twill tape, it's about 8 inches, fold it in half and cut them into 2 equal pieces. And we're going to fold them in half like this and tuck the folded edge on the exterior side of the bag, about 1 inch down from the zipper seam, maybe a little closer, a little less than that. And we'll pin those in place. So make sure that it's the folded edge that's tucked in, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. We're going to make a mark in the middle of the bottom seam of the lining, so the lighter weight one. 5 inches apart, 2 marks. It doesn't have to be exactly in the center, just somewhere away from the corners. And we're not going to sew in between these 2 marks. We're going to leave this open, and that's how we're going to turn the bag right side out. So we're going to switch back to our regular stitch length 2.2 on my machine. We're starting at one of the marks, and we're using a 3/8 seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and end. We're sewing around the whole thing, making sure that we pivot at the corners with the needle down. I'm taking away that first clip, and I'm just going to flatten this out here. My presser foot wants to push that fabric. Because my needle's down, it's okay for me to lift the presser foot, and I'm going to flatten that out again. And I'm going right over the twill tape right now, and I'm going to back stitch over top of it to secure it. I'm just going to trim the seam allowance a little bit at the sides here by the zipper. Just want to make sure you don't cut your stitching. I just don't want it to be bulky up there. And now we're going to be making the box corners. So we need to have the zipper fully open, so you can reach inside your no-sew zone and get that zipper all the way open. And now keep your hand in there, and what we're doing is flattening that side seam so that it goes against the bottom seam. If you want to make this super nice, just open up your bottom seam too, and you can open up this side seam. They should be lined up. And so a box corner is basically we're sewing across these corners here. And so a 1-inch box corner would measure 1 inch across here. So if I sewed from here to here, it'd be a tiny little 1-inch box corner. If I measured at the 2 inches across point, it would be across from here to here. This is a little easier. So there would be a 1-inch box corner. A 2-inch box corner would be sewing across there. A 3-inch and a 4-inch. Would be measured across here, and we're going to be doing 4-inch ones, so you can, it really changes the size of the bag. You can keep going. I have this little ruler, it's called Carol's Box Corners. I really love it for this. because it makes sure that you're lining your seams up properly. So you take that center seam and you line it up with, you take that center line, it gets lined up with the center seam like this, and then you can check to see that it's opened up properly because those edges should line up. And then I'm gonna push it over until I'm at the 4, and you can see there's a 4-inch right there. And then I'll draw a line, and that's where I'm gonna sew. And I just like to put clips just to make sure it stays. So we need to do this with the 2 corners in the exterior and the 2 corners in the lining. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like when you don't open it up properly, because when you're first learning how to do it. So you can flatten that corner out. And if I go and put this ruler on, you can see that if I line that center seam up, you can see how the ruler is off. And so that's why this ruler is really nice, because it makes sure that you're lining it up right, so that it's telling me that it's not pushed open properly. So if I open it like that, now that center seam is lining up a lot better, so I can pull that down to the 4. I'm gonna open my seams too. And we'll do the same thing with the lining. We're just going to sew on the line, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Okay, so now we're going to cut off the excess, these triangles here. I'm going to cut off about maybe 3/8 of an inch, so that there's 3/8 of a seam allowance left, or a 1/4 inch. And now we're going to turn the whole thing right side out through this hole. So if you can reach in, grab an end, and pull it through. Just make sure you really poke your corners out and stick your finger right in there. Find out if there's any holes. It's not a fun surprise. So once we sew up the hole in the lining, we'll be able to tuck that right inside like that. So now we're gonna tuck in the seam allowance at the hole, at the opening here. So I've got the edge, that bottom seam right to the edge. Those raw edges are folded down inside. I'm gonna match them up and just quickly press them so that we have a really nice finished edge. And now we're gonna sew along the bottom edge with a very tiny seam allowance, really close to the folds. Now we could just sew where the hole is, but I'm gonna actually start right at the edge here, and that way it's gonna be all the way across the bottom. So it will look the same all the way across.